Absolutely.
Big weekend. Are you a basketball fan?
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Bill Ritter on this NCAA Finals weekend. The excitement here is very high. Welcome to GMA Sunday. Juju Chang is a big basketball fan, as well as a big-time ABC News correspondent. Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you. Stanford lost. This is her alumni, so...
I'm afraid I'm very sad this morning, yes. But it was a great game. The lead changed 10 times in the back half.
Overtime, I understand?
Overtime. It was fascinating.
And you're wearing Stanford color.
I'm wearing Cardinal. That's our color. And also the black for the morning, you know.
Well, your school...
Because they lost, you know.
But your school lost, but we win because you're here with us for the next
There you
weeks.
go.
So
Yeah.
nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
We are going to be dealing a lot this morning with the terrible thing that happened in Jonesboro, Arkansas this week. The tragedy there has sparked some creative ways to look for solutions, and we are going to revisit a doctor in Oregon who is waging her own campaign to stop kids from killing kids.
A bit of preventive medicine.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's definitely a big weekend in college basketball. Robin Roberts will preview the men's and women's championship games a little later in the program, but she's in Kansas City, isn't she?
Hi, Robin.
Hi, Bill. Hey, Juju. Good morning.
Is that your new co-host right there? What is that?
I love what she looks good with that Cardinal red, and it was a great game, losing in overtime like that to Kentucky. But, you know, I almost don't know what to do here because actually Kemper Arena is quiet for the first time all weekend long. That won't be the case tonight when Tennessee and Rocky Top is blaring because the Lady Vol is trying to bring home this beautiful Sears Trophy for an historic third year in a row. And then in San Antonio, going for the Sears Trophy there will be Kentucky, sorry about that, Juju, and Utah, a surprise team. So maybe I'll look into the crystal ball a little bit later and have some predictions for you.
Very good, Robin. We'll get that from you a little later. We have a lot of show, including a story you did on spirituality. We'll have all that a little later in our show. But first, we begin this morning with the news. And we begin with President Clinton. He ended a 4-day visit to South Africa this morning with a trip to Soweto Township. He attended church this morning at Regina Mundi, where many blacks took refuge, you'll recall, during the last years of their struggle against apartheid. Here at home, the president drew some criticism last night from Newt Gingrich. He challenged Mr. Clinton for failing to defend the U.S. economic embargo against Cuba and Libya.
It isn't enough to go to a former prison in South Africa and look out of the bars and then forget that there are prisoners tonight in Cuba who are in bars and they should be released and there should be free elections.
As of this hour, the Clintons are in Botswana, that is Africa's oldest democracy. The president plans to take a photo safari through Chobe National Park in search of some big game. We have some big game there too. ABC's Sam Donaldson has been waiting for him there, and he joins us this morning. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning.
How are you? I guess there's a little delay on the
satellite. I'm here on the Chobe River. You may see it behind me. I'm here on the Chobe River. You may see it behind me at the Moana Lodge. And yes, indeed, President Clinton will come here later today, although it'll be almost night by the time he gets here. So tomorrow he'll go to the big game park, and he's going to see a lot of game. There are 45,000 elephants, according to the guides here, in this park. Now, I don't know precisely how they've counted that number, but I'll take their word for it. There are lots of hippo in the river here. I mean, they're all up and down the river. There are Cape buffalo that he'll see in the park. Perhaps a pride of lions. Lions are in the park. Giraffes and a lot of other game in the park. And the president is said to be looking forward to this big game safari.
Sam, I do note that the president of Botswana is going to step down this week, part of the constitutional process there, and the vice president is going to take over. Maybe Mr. Clinton wants to take some notes on this process for the year 2000.
Well, as a matter of fact, the vice president will take over in 2 days, and that's when Mr. Clinton leaves Botswana. This is another example of how democracy is working in many places here in Africa. Of course, that's one of the themes that the president has stressed on his trip. Well, yes, perhaps he will take some comfort from hoping that his vice president succeeds him in the year 2000, but I think it's way too early to talk about that.
Yeah, good point. All right, Sam Donaldson with the president in Botswana, Africa. Also, Sam will be joining his colleague Cokie Roberts a little later on this week with Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts. Thanks, Sam. Juju?
Well, in other news, President Clinton took time from his Africa trip yesterday to remember the victims of the Jonesboro shooting in his weekly radio address. He urged the nation to look for reasons that would explain the kind of violence that took 5 lives this week. But there are no answers for the people of Jonesboro. ABC's Dean Reynolds is there.
The funerals are over now, but the grieving has really just begun. 3 victims were buried on Saturday, 2 little girls ages 11 and 12, and Shannon Wright, the 32-year-old teacher who died protecting students from the gunfire last Tuesday.
If you want to see the face of a saint, and you want to see the actions of a hero, you need to look no further than Shannon Wright. On a hill far away.
The funeral service was broadcast to a stunned and heartsick audience, people still groping for answers, for some explanation why the plague of youthful violence came to their town. Shannon Wright left behind a husband, a 2-year-old son, and many friends.
When we all get together as friends, there's going to be a void. There's going to be a sadness there that was never there before.
Well, it's going to be real hard for that chair to be filled.
But school resumes tomorrow. Someone else will be teaching Mrs. Wright's 6th grade class, and the surviving victims must go on with their lives. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Jonesboro, Arkansas.
Police in Southern California are working to unravel a different kind of murder mystery. They already have a suspect, but now they have to prove there has been a crime. Until they do, the hospital worker who says he killed dozens of patients will remain free. Here's ABC's Jane Clayson.
Glendale Adventist Medical Center has terminated the respiratory technician who allegedly confessed to hastening the deaths of as many as 50 seriously ill patients. In a statement to police, Efren Saldivar said he considered himself an angel of death. He was angry to see terminally ill patients kept alive, and he spoke proudly of the ethical criteria he used to choose victims. They had to be unconscious with a do not resuscitate order, and in his words, ready to die. But even with an alleged confession, Saldivar has not been arrested because the hospital has no other evidence.
A confession in and of itself is not proof for a conviction in the state of California. You must have some evidence, no matter how slight, that a crime was committed.
Police say some of the patients could be exhumed and tested for traces of the drugs Saldivar allegedly used.
Most often, again, these people on the brink of dying, it's hard to prove if that was done by a drug or by natural.
Saldivar allegedly told police he felt encouraged by other technicians who gave him the room numbers of patients who were suffering. The hospital has suspended its entire 44-member respiratory staff with pay, while police begin an investigation that could last many months. Jane Clayson, ABC News, Glendale, California.
Hard to believe that he would have done this, if he did it, on his own, without people knowing it. I guess that's why they suspended people.
Right, with dozens of victims, you would think that somebody would have been suspicious.
Yeah, interesting story, and weird. Okay, when we come back, can kids be scared into staying away from guns?
Well, we'll take a look at that when GMA Sunday returns. We'll look at one doctor's mission to show how young people don't really understand the terrible damage that bullets can do.
In the Sunday forecast, a low-pressure system could produce some showers and thunderstorms, some of them severe over the nation's midsection. And low pressure could also bring rain and snow to the west. Most of the east coast is going to be dry and warm. Highs are going to range from the 60s to 80s from the central and southern plains to the Gulf and Atlantic coast. In the west, temps will be cooler with highs in the 30s to 40s in the Rockies and in the 50s to 60s along the west coast. Now, for more on your local weather forecast, check out After the Show, abcnews.com, on the World Wide Web, or on AOL. And GMA Sunday will be right back after this.
Good Morning America Sunday's Weather Report is brought to you by MCI 5-Cent Sundays.
This weekend, people in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and indeed across the country, are struggling with questions that really have no easy answers. Questions like, why would two young boys, just 13 and 11, shoot into a crowd of their classmates? And do kids really understand that in the real world, guns can kill?
And there are some answers. One doctor in Oregon may have a theory, and we first told you about her in December. Her name is Dr. Linda Irwin, and Bill Redeker now joins us with an update on this interesting
Good morning, Juju and Bill. Linda Irwin, as we explained back in December, is an emergency room doctor in Portland, Oregon, and she has treated hundreds of young gunshot victims. And the theory that you allude to is this. She believes that children who are inundated with images of violence on television and movies really don't get it. They don't really understand that guns can cause such horrific damage and that they're extremely painful. So in order to make sure that they understand that, she's put together a very graphic slideshow and a presentation for them. And after the Jonesboro shooting, we checked in with her and discovered that indeed a number of schools and community groups have asked her to pay a visit to them.
Tony's hit on the right side. All bleeding was from the mouth.
I want you to keep your head nice and still. And I'm gonna
Friday
stand on your
night,
neck.
Legacy Emmanuel Hospital in Portland, Oregon. Dr. Linda Irwin directs a team of trauma surgeons.
We're going to take good care of you. It is not a job for the faint-hearted. It's very busy. You have to make a lot of complicated decisions rapidly. I want you to push now against me and try and turn your head to the right. We're one of 2 level 1 trauma care centers in Oregon, so we get the very severely injured people.
Too often, that means Dr. Irwin has to operate on teenagers who have been stabbed or shot. It's a job that takes an emotional toll.
Maybe part of it is some sort of adult shame that we fail to protect them somehow. Some feeling that this isn't anything this kid should be dealing with, much less, this just shouldn't happen.
A few years ago, Dr. Irwin decided that she had witnessed enough violence. Something had to be done. Kids had to be warned about the pain of gunshot wounds. And it was a 16-year-old victim who made that abundantly clear.
And as I was wheeling him into the operating room, he looked up at me, he looked straight in my eyes. He said with complete and utter honest shock, "I didn't know this would hurt."
It was the disturbing notion that getting shot doesn't hurt that led Irwin to develop the Save Our Youth program. Armed with a slideshow that graphically depicts gunshot injuries, Irwin bluntly explains to school children the brutal reality of gun violence.
I'm going to warn you, I'm going to show you some slides of real patients and real injuries that are pretty nasty.
Irwin starts off the presentation with statistics about guns, and then leads into the real stories of young patients she has treated over the past few years.
The really, truly tragic injury here isn't going from here to here. This bullet severed this young man's spinal cord and put him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life.
Irwin knows on this day she's dealing with a tough audience. These kids think they know all about guns since most of them live in a home with a hunting rifle.
How many of you guys in here have guns in your homes?
But after Irwin explains how easily kids can shoot other kids, the message sinks in.
We all have a lot of guns around the house, and what she said, I'm thinking about telling my parents not to get them by me because I'm actually scared of things now. Yeah.
Irwin has delivered her presentation to hundreds of schools, clubs, and community groups throughout Oregon. She's learned to tailor the message to different audiences, toning it down a bit for younger kids.
The bullet went in here, and see how it just blasted the watermelon and made this big hole on the way out?
She has also made an important discovery about what works and what doesn't, and which slides her audience reacts to.
The ones the kids picked that had the impact on them were the slides that showed disability or deformity. A lot of these kids have a very casual, almost blasé attitude about death, but they want to look good. You know, which is a very kind of teenager thing, I guess, when you think about it.
It's difficult to gauge the impact of Dr. Irwin's efforts. Kids are still shooting each other. 14 children die every day in this country as a result of gunfire. Irwin believes that if adults don't get involved, don't try to prevent what she encounters in the emergency room every night, there is no doubt it will only get worse.
If I find a gun, I will not touch it. If I go talk to 1,000 kids and one kid makes a different choice that keeps him safe, then I consider that a successful talk. Excellent. Okay, good job.
It's really about bringing the consequences of gunfire really home to kids.
14 kids a day in this country die.
Yeah, and I thought the most interesting point that she made through that entire discussion with the kids is death is difficult for young children to grasp, but disfiguration, being put into a wheelchair, that they can associate with
They want to
because
look
of the
good.
image. Sure.
Yeah, they want to look good. And this program has been really picked up by other schools across the country.
It has, and she's been contacted since these shootings, as we talked about earlier, to go back to some of these schools and to put out the message again. And it seems to be having an impact, but then again, you know, you just don't know until it happens, as we saw in Arkansas.
All right,
But it's so relevant to what happened this week.
Oh, no question.
Yeah,
It reminds me of that Scared Straight program they used to do in prisons.
It's very similar. She's taken a couple of ideas from that program and tried to sort of shock these kids into the sensibility that they need.
All right, Bill Redeker, good report. Thanks.
Thank you.
Coming up next, oh, there we are. Robin Roberts previews the men's and women's college basketball championships.
when GMA Sunday returns. Stay with us.
Good Morning America Sunday is brought to you by Clairol Herbal Essence Shampoo and Conditioner.
Oh, huge.
I'm excited.
Very big. It's, as you know, a huge weekend for college basketball. The Final Four are down to the Final Two, and Robin Roberts is in Kansas City for that very reason, where the women's championship game will be played tonight.
Coming up, Robin is going to preview both the men's and women's final games. But first, she has one of the year's biggest success stories in high school basketball. Good morning again, Robin.
Good morning, Bill and Juju. No doubt there will be a lot of high school basketball players watching tonight's game, dreaming that, one day maybe they too will be taking part in a national championship game. Tennessee and Louisiana Tech are in the spotlight. Recently, I had the pleasure of spending time with a young ball player who was in the glare of the spotlight even before high school.
This is Nisha Butler, hot, up-and-coming model. This is Nisha Butler, basketball sensation.
Amy,
and this is Nisha Butler, average teenager.
Is this high school? What is the address?
Whatever she does with focus and drive. She is an above-average student, and on the court, well, she's one of the top players in the country. She averaged 30 points a game and scored over 3,000 points, more than any other player in New York City history, girl or boy.
She's really unstoppable. You need two people to stop her. She's that good. That's the sign of a superstar, is a person who can dominate the game by themselves.
Dominance, her coach says, that comes from her competitiveness.
Michael Jordan could beat her 23 baskets to nothing, and she'll wind up playing him the next day. And she'll wind up scoring 2 or 3, and she'll play him the next day. And she'll watch him until she beats him. She just does never give up.
So who is responsible for this?
My dad.
Her dad taught her discipline. Every day, Nisha would practice basketball. And every day, in addition to her homework, she would read the paper and pick out vocabulary words. Her dad also thought television was a distraction, so he wouldn't allow her to watch it.
She went back to school, everybody was talking about the Ninja Turtles and everything else and what they saw on TV the night before, right? And she said, I never look at TV. I said, well, it's just not that important, right?
Other things were important, like improving Nisha's concentration through nightly games of chess. Nisha still plays chess with her dad, only now she can win.
Checkmate. Check. As I look back, I can say, okay, it was well worth it. But during the times, it was hard.
The hard work started paying off quickly. The awards piled up as Nisha's teams won game after game, and college recruiters started paying attention. She was only 11 years old when she got the first letter from a college.
I think that was actually the coolest thing, because I didn't know what it was. It's like, hey, Purdue, where is that? I'm 11 years old, and my dad's like, Alice, I think we got something.
And then the letters started pouring in. She made headlines when she chose Georgia Tech, where she will face new challenges.
She has to go through that whole thing of playing with some players just like her. There's going to be 10 Nishas wherever she goes.
She may be getting a lot of attention, but Nisha realizes that younger girls need attention too. She doesn't shy away from being an active role model.
See you go crossover.
Crossover dribble? Yeah. Should I do my crossover?
I think what might be considered most meaningful to her is how it affects the work with the younger girls and what potential opportunity exists for younger girls coming up.
You know how they say Air Jordan?
Air Jordan.
Be Air Nisha.
Air Nisha. That's a good one, Air Nisha.
She also reaches young people on her very own website, where she keeps a diary of her life, updated weekly, and responds to letters from kids. Like any 17-year-old, she wants to do everything. But unlike any other 17-year-old, she just might.
Let me get this. Possible pro basketball player, can model, let's see, sportscaster, and own your own restaurant.
Yeah.
Is that, I'm pretty much in the ballpark?
Pretty much the ballpark. Yeah, I mean, hey, you have one life. You might as well live it to the fullest. And I don't see anything else, why anything else should take a back seat, So I just want to do everything. Hopefully I can do it.
All I have to say is, you go, girl.
All right. Thank you.
Go, girl.
Thank you.
And it just so happens that Nisha ended her high school career yesterday by leading her team, Riverdale, to the state title in her division. Of course, she was named MVP. And Bill and Juju, an interesting note here, both Louisiana Tech and Tennessee, who will play tonight in the championship game, both of them recruited Nisha Butler.
Yeah, well, and they're not alone. Did I hear her say sportscaster? Robin?
Right, exactly. I know. Yeah, she was after my job. Who isn't here? Okay, I'm just glad I wasn't wearing the same sweater. I was a little bit nervous when I saw my piece in the same sweater that I'm wearing.
That's really all that matters, Robin, when you get down to it, right?
No, the thing that matters, Tennessee and Louisiana Tech battling for the national championship, especially the Lady Vols. They're undefeated, trying to go 39-0. They've won 2 consecutive NCAA titles, going for a 3rd straight. Shermequa Holtzclaw, who also played high school ball in New York, like Nisha Butler, is just awesome. She's considered, of course, the best player in the game today and possibly of all time in the women's game. And she has always won championships wherever she has gone. She won 4 high school championships, state championships for Christ the King there in New York, and she has 2 with the Lady Vols. She'd like to make it 3 here, and it's going to be difficult for the Lady Texters to stop Pat Summitt and the Lady Vols.
And she is one of the 3 Meeks, right, who play for Tennessee? I love that.
Very good, Juju. Yeah, I know, and you know, usually Meeks, you know, you don't think of people being a terror on the basketball court, but these Meeks may indeed inherit another national championship. They may not inherit the world. Boom, boom. It's Sunday, you know.
Very good. I like that.
But they could indeed do that. The 3 Meeks have just been awesome.
All right, when we come back, Robin, you're going to fill us in on tomorrow night's men's game.
I will do that.
We'll be right back.
We look forward to it. Nice shot. Very nice shot.
Nice shot.
Big room. Tonight, Tennessee takes on Louisiana Tech in the Women's College Basketball Championships. We're all looking forward to it. And tomorrow, the men's title game. It's Utah against Kentucky, I'm afraid to say.
You're afraid because you went to Stanford and
and the Cardinal lost.
But you're wearing your black t-shirt for morning and your red jacket for...
Well, what's great is that Cardinal is not only our color, but it's our mascot. It's like the Crimson Tide, you know.
Yeah, well, we don't want to talk about the losers.
No, we want to talk about the winners.
And that's why we're going back to Robin Roberts. She joined us again from Kansas City, where tonight the finals in the Women's Basketball Championships will take place. Good morning again, Robin.
Good morning again, Bill. I'm just so happy that there's another woman by your side that knows sports as much as I do. I love that.
More than I do. That's the key caveat to that.
Which isn't hard, Bill.
Doesn't take
not
much.
hard.
Yeah.
You admit it.
I proudly admit it, and I'm glad that the women I surround myself with, or that surround me, know about stuff. They can fill me in.
Well, there you go.
Robin, you don't think this is going to be much of a contest tonight?
I didn't say that, Bill. I think it'll be, tonight's game with Tennessee and Louisiana Tech, I think it'll be tied into the end with Tennessee pulling it out. But tomorrow night with Kentucky in the championship game for the 3rd year in a row for the men facing Utah. Utah is just amazing that they were able to beat North Carolina. They beat Arizona to get to the Final Four, and then to play North Carolina, who was in the semifinals last year, was just tremendous. Andre Miller had an awesome game, controlled the tempo to get Utah to the championship game for the first time in 54 years. And then Kentucky stomping, as we see Utah and North Carolina. It was just simply a domination by the Utes, and no one really expected the top seed North Carolina to go out like that, but they did. And now the Utes will go on to the championship game to play Kentucky. And I'm sorry, Juju, got to talk about this. You know, Stanford put up a valiant fight.
Unbelievable.
It was an unbelievable game, which we have seen all year long in this NCAA tournament. And Jeff Shepard was awesome. He had 27 points, a career high. He had a key 3-pointer.
Look at
He
that.
also had the winning free throw in overtime, but a valiant effort by Stanford to get as far as they did. But Kentucky in the final against Utah, I don't think many people in their office pools had that one picked.
No, not at all. But it does say a lot about March Madness, because so many of these games were so exciting. Buzzer shots, 1-point games down to the end. And last night was an overtime game. It was thrilling.
It was thrilling, and I think we'll see that again in the championship game, both tonight here at Kemper Arena with the women and also tomorrow night there in San Antonio.
Thanks, Robin. We'll be right back.
Anytime.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to GMA Sunday. Bill Ritter here, along with Juju Chang. You know, you weren't here last week, but you remember last week in New York.
Yes.
Let me show you what it was like last week in New York and what a difference a week makes.
Can you say snow?
Look at that. We built a snowman in our outside our apartment.
Did you?
After the show, and now, that's last week. Now take a look at today. Let's look what it looks like right now. It's going to be 85 degrees according to the AccuWeather forecast.
Spring has officially sprung.
I
Look
think
at that.
it's summer
in 1
already.
week.
I think spring blew by.
That's unbelievable.
So anyway, I hope it's nice where you are. As you heard in the weather, there's going to be some thunderstorms in some parts of the country, but in most of the east, it's going to be very nice and warm. I have to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Because people ask me this all the time. Is Juju your real name?
It is not my real name. Hinju is my real name, which is Korean. Hinju. But when I was very young, my swim coach gave me Juju. And over the years, when I was like 10 years old, he gave me that. And over the years, people have come up to me and told me what Juju means. For example, in French, it means little toy, a juju. And in Persian, which is the Iranian language, it means little chick. And in Africa, it means like voodoo, black magic. Isn't that cool?
Wow.
So I was thinking, like, what does Bill mean?
I've been searching for that answer all my life, really, you know.
Like, can you get the bill? You know, stuff like that.
$100. But
Bill.
In terms of the higher plane of that question, I don't have a clue. I'm sorry. Does Cokie Roberts, are you there?
I'm here.
Is Cokie your real name?
Of course not.
Of course not. See? What does Cokie mean?
Well, my real name is Mary Martha Corrine Morrison Claiborne Boggs Roberts.
Wow, Cokie's easier.
I think I like Cokie. I like Cokie.
My brother couldn't pronounce Corrine, so when I came home from the hospital a mere 54 years ago, he dubbed me Cokie, and it's been that ever since.
And if you'd had a swim coach, he could have named you Juju.
No, none of that swimming stuff went on.
Cokie, let me welcome you. We just talked to Sam a half hour ago. He's in Botswana.
Right.
How's he going to be there and your place at the same time?
Well, he's going to join us a couple of times on our broadcast this morning. First, to talk about the White House reaction to the latest set of problems for the president. Paula Jones's lawyers have now responded to the White House response to the White House is, of course, moving to have a summary judgment in that Paula Jones case, have it not go to trial on May 27th. This is scheduled to. The Jones lawyers are now accusing the White House of obstruction of justice, pointing out that they had subpoenaed Kathleen Willey's documents having to do with Kathleen Willey. Those documents were not produced by the White House in response to the subpoena, but then produced in an effort to discredit Ms. Willey after her television appearance. So that is now the latest problem for the White House. Sam will be giving us the reaction early in the broadcast, and then later he will return and bring us the story of Africa so far.
And you saw him, I don't know if you saw him on our show earlier. He was talking about elephants and hippopotami.
Right, he's very excited about those elephants.
He was clearly very excited. I think he shot that tape himself. He was so excited. You're also going to talk about what happened, the tragedy in Jonesboro,
Well, that
Arkansas
is the main focus of our broadcast this morning, and it is obviously something that has the whole country terribly upset and disturbed, the notion of children shooting children. And we will be talking to Dr. Laura Schlesinger, the radio talk show host, about the role of parents and parenting and all of this. We'll be talking to actor-director Rob Reiner and a Harvard psychologist, Slaby, about the whole question of the role of the media, the mass media, popular culture, television, rap songs, video games, all of that. And then we'll also talk to the Attorney General of Arkansas about the whole question of how these children, these young boys, will be treated in the juvenile justice system and what kind of, whether they can get close to adult treatment or not.
Big debate about that. I know at last night's news, Terry Moran had a story about that, and I talked to him afterwards, and he said that while these boys probably will not be treated as adults, it could spark a whole movement for crimes like this to have kids be tried as adults.
Well, that's already happened at the federal level, and that was one of the possibilities, was that there might be some sort of way to get them tried by a federal court instead of a state court, although that seems highly unlikely. But you know, the idea of trying an 11-year-old as an adult is something that really is a little hard to wrap your mind around.
Exactly.
So this whole question of why, I mean, that's really what we're all asking as a country, I think. Why did this happen? How could it happen in a town like Jonesboro, Arkansas, which seems like such a nice community, a place people move to get away from these kinds of problems?
And now they're in the middle.
What can be done about it?
Okay, Cokie, an interesting show coming up later this week with Sam Donaldson reporting from Botswana and Cokie Roberts ensconced in Washington. Thanks for joining us, as always.
Good to be with you, Bill.
All right, Cokie. All right, when we come back, your story.
About a religious revival among young people in this country. Maybe we can all do a little soul searching.
We'll be right back. So many polls you read and you don't know what to believe about religion and how religious and spiritual we are as a country. One poll says we're leaving churches and synagogues, another poll says we're flocking to them. Hard to know who to believe. Juju has been looking into this question all week for us, and have a different take on it.
It's very interesting. Americans define spirituality as being something separate than religion, but there is a culture that's changing right now. The people in their 30s or 40s are sort of looking to some greater meaning, in search of meaning. And a lot of times what happens is you spend your 30s working on your career and going after sort of the material things in life, and then in your 30s you begin to settle down, start a family, you have your kids, and you think, maybe there's more, maybe there's something more to life. And so a lot of times what's happening is this younger generation, which is the generation following the counterculture, the generation after the 60s, is looking again at religion to see if perhaps it might fill a void in their life.
7 years ago, Deborah Turcotte was a struggling actress who had just broken up with a long-term boyfriend.
I moved out and just felt that the world had been pulled out from under me.
Like many young people, Deborah had stopped going to church when she was in college. But a decade later, her personal crisis brought her here, to Redeemer Presbyterian Church in Manhattan.
You come to Redeemer and you say, I want some inspiration. I want to get into my...
It gave me a different way of looking at the world. It gave me a different way of looking at myself.
Now she's one of 2,000 people, average age 30, who meet every week seeking spiritual guidance.
All of a sudden I was an accepted, loved child of God. And so, all right, if I have a bad day at work, it doesn't mean that I'm a failure.
That kind of spiritual awakening is exactly what's drawing so many young people back to religion. Church attendance in this country hasn't really changed much in the past 50 years, but lately a new generation of churches and synagogues is experiencing explosive growth.
In just 8 years, Redeemer has gone from 50 to more than 2,000 members. They come every week to hear Reverend Tim Keller's mix of humor, philosophy, and Christianity.
I know people have trouble with forgiveness. I know people are lonely. I know people are actually having trouble making their public and private life come together. So that I am, in a sense, solving their problems. I'm sort of doing group counseling in the pulpit.
Group counseling for a generation known more for its cynicism than its spiritualism.
I'm going to explain to you tomorrow.
For Michael Miller, a 32-year-old public school teacher, being Jewish never triggered anything spiritually. Religion was something he says his parents had to force him to study.
Bye, guys. I would dread going to Hebrew school. I remember my father taking me out of my Little League baseball games early to go to Hebrew school, and it was, I would much rather be playing baseball.
But throughout his adult life, Michael felt he was missing something. He even attended Christian services with his closest friends in search of meaning.
Even though I wasn't Christian, I longed for the feeling that they had inside.
He finally found it at a weekly Jewish Bible study class called Hineni.
When you give from your heart, that's the most beautiful thing that you can do.
Hineni started as a handful of people studying biblical passages in an office. But just 3 years later, Esther Youngrice, whose late husband was a rabbi, packs a synagogue full of 2,000 young, upwardly mobile Jewish professionals.
And tonight it is very exciting.
They can't seem to get enough of her down-to-earth style of teaching the Torah, the Jewish Bible.
So you have your new car, so you have a new yacht, so you have a home in the Hamptons. But after you acquire it, then what? Leaves you empty and desirous of more. The only happiness that a person can have is spiritual happiness.
That message has transformed Michael Miller's life. He's now trying to sell the restaurant he owns because he feels it keeps him from observing the Jewish Sabbath.
She spoke so much with her soul. For the first time, I started to realize that my religion can actually be spiritual besides the traditions. The spiritual part I never found before.
He's also found a more meaningful nightlife.
It's so conducive to meeting people. People go out to dinner afterwards. For about 2 hours, people are meeting in a social room afterwards.
Reverend Keller says people looking for a connection to God also look for a connection to a community.
Greg, nice to meet you.
The younger generation has experienced divorce and broken homes in a way that no other generation has, I don't think. And so a sense of belonging is definitely high on their want list, their wish list. No doubt about that.
A sense of belonging that many seem to be finding in more relevant places.
Looked a little like a social club there, didn't it?
It is. It is. It's all 30-somethings, and people are really there to meet other people. Half the time you're not sure if it's a religious service or a dating service.
So there is some truth to that. I mean,
Yes.
you were sort of joking about that, but
No, absolutely. But at the same time, everybody's there for spiritual sustenance. So there's not that oogie undertone. You know, it's very interesting.
does it last? You know, the sizzle is there because everyone searches for meaning, so all of a sudden someone searches here and says, okay, I'm going to try to find meaning of life by going to church services or temple.
That's a great question. Deborah Turcott, one of the women we talked to, said, I can't stand that I'm part of a trend, because she's been doing it for 8 years. She's been going to services for a long time. She takes her spirituality very seriously, and it's just a part of a fabric of her life now, and it brings great meaning to her.
Was that a mega church that we saw in Manhattan?
It is a mega church. The Redeemer Church is very large. They don't like to refer to themselves that way, but they are evangelical Presbyterian.
But not a revivalist kind of thing, speaking in tongues like we see a big movement going on right
in
now.
fact, he really appeals to philosophy and your intellect, and he takes logic and he turns it on its head and uses it because it's very sort of attractive and provocative for people of that generation to be challenged intellectually. So it's not about sort of Latin and Greek, it's more about sort of how to live your day-to-day life.
I wonder if Michael Miller, if his father had gotten him out of Little League to go to Hebrew school, if he had just waited till Little League was over and then taken him to Hebrew school, whether Michael would have had a different view of that.
He might have. He said he really resented it,
Yeah.
and he walked away from the religion for a long time as a result.
So play ball and then go to Hebrew school after. That's the lesson there, right? Interesting story.
Certainly one lesson.
Interesting story.
Thanks.
All right, coming up next, what's bugging George Chicorone this week?
The answer may very well surprise you. Stay with us.
You know, most of us hate taking our work home with us, and you'd think that that would go double for, let's say, an exterminator.
Yeah, but you know, our George Chicorone has a knack for finding people who are just out of the mold and a little bit wacky. So George joins us now to tell us about his latest find.
Well, after we were done with the National Review and all this, we picked up this thing here, and this was Offbeat Museums. It was across our desk, and we were looking through it, and they have the Banana Museum, the Elephant Museum, the Nut Museum. But what caught our eye was, a fellow named Michael Bodan. And what Michael is an exterminator, a bee man in the business, a bug man. And what he does, it's nothing personal with him. After his dirty deed is done, he pays homage to his little creatures. And you have to see this to believe it. Take a look.
Can't wait.
Shh. Michael Bodan is here in his unmarked car on a delicate mission.
A lot of times people don't like their neighbors to know that they have cockroaches, so guess what they call them? Water bugs.
Inside your walls, under the floor, the cabinet, behind your door.
Mike may be one of the best of the pest men. His assignment? Rub out roaches.
They get a drink inside your sink.
I've been called Cockroach Dundee, and I tell you, when a cockroach sees me, he runs. But he can't hide. But he can't get away from me, because I'll get him in the end.
Well, he may call himself Cockroach Dundee, but he's not just a roach killer, he's a roach curator. Just take a look at what he's got going on inside.
We did a contest for a search of Dallas's largest cockroach. Then after a couple years, we got bored with that, so we spruced it up by having people dress up their cockroaches.
Ho, ho, ho. Maybe it's the $1,000 first prize that tempts seemingly normal people to turn a bug into a buxom blonde Madonna. Some cockroach costumers pay tribute to favorite legends like Marilyn Monroe.
Ooh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
She gives new meaning to the term 7-year itch. And some of these roaches really go for the glitz.
This is one of my favorites. It's Liveroche, and it was done by a 85-year-old grandma in Fort Worth, and has music, lights, and everything.
Oh, I just love that song. I really do.
Competitor Diana Kolb and her mom went for something a little more cutting edge.
This is John Wayne Bobbitt. At that time, his wife cut his little private parts off.
Well, this is a family show, so you have to take our word for it, but believe me, the mother and daughter team likes details. You won't want to look under that little piece of tissue. The faint of heart may be freaked out by my favorite. It's the Combates Motel, where the demon in disguise has some moves that Hitchcock would have envied. Talk about a roach motel.
Viva
Elvis the King is back in Vegas doing a star turn in a tinier jumpsuit. But shrinking that familiar outfit isn't the most fantastic feat here.
And even with all my 20 years experience as an exterminator, I don't know how to put shoes on a cockroach.
Excuse me? Oh, that must be Imelda Marker roach.
Little gold cockroach shoes? That's right.
As any homeowner knows, cockroaches will multiply, and Mike's exhibit is no exception.
I guess on my tombstone there'll probably be, there wasn't a cockroach that he didn't like.
Great big cockroach. He's just laying there, looking up at me.
Are you nuts?
Those are big cockroaches.
Oh yeah, they're like a dog. Some of those things,
Oh,
they're very big. But it's funny that he can find. It's not the worst job in the world. He loves that. I mean, he's really into it.
Yes,
and,
clearly.
but I mean, it's creativity is just out there. It's amazing. You ready for some bug cockroach facts?
Okay, fun facts with cockroaches.
This is a couple that you might not have known before. If Noah had put only one pair of cockroaches on his ark, it would have taken him, the roaches anyway, 2 years to repopulate the entire world with roaches.
They're little rabbits, aren't they, these cockroaches?
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah.
These guys, very amorous. But anyway, the roaches then
Very busy.
also, for fun fact number 2, they will eat, what do you think they eat without looking at the screen?
Well, we're looking at the screen.
Right, food, any kind of food.
Well, they do eat anything, but their favorite foods are dog food, beer, and bananas.
I would have guessed that, George. I would have guessed that. Dog food, beer, and banana. Now, why that?
Who knows? They like it. There's some chemical in there that they really go after.
And who does the testing for that? Is there like some cockroach food tester out there who's like,
I think they, what is it, like a $2 million allocation by the government? No, I don't know. But they, as a matter of fact, their digestive systems are so advanced, I'm learning more than I should know about this stuff. But he was telling me a postage stamp, the gum on the back of a postage stamp can sustain, I think, 15 cockroaches for like 2 weeks.
Only on GMA Sunday would you have learned that fact. Remember, beer, bananas, and dog food.
So keep that stuff in the refrigerator, guys.
George, I can't wait to see your next project.
Oh, okay.
We'll be right back with more fun facts.
Thank you,
after
George.
this.
That's so great.
Good Morning America Sunday is brought to you by Kellogg's.
We're continuing our intellectually challenging discussion on cockroaches.
The old cockroach.
Now, cockroaches have no discernible value on this earth, right?
That's right. They're just, if it works for them, I guess it has over the last 350 million years or something like
just
that.
exist.
They're still here, yeah.
They're just there.
And they exist within 30 feet of themselves. In other words, they don't travel very far.
And if you...
They live out their life, basically.
If you see one roach, there are how many behind the wall?
100 behind the wall,
100
they
behind the wall.
say.
And who's counting those? That's what I
Yeah,
Where do we get these
another
facts?
government survey. That
Right,
George
exactly.
found out.
This is a great book.
A couple of program notes before we go. Later this morning on This Week with Sam Donaldson and Koki Roberts. You remember Sam is in Botswana, Koki's in Washington. Who is responsible for the tragedy in Jonesboro? We're going to hear from the Attorney General of Arkansas, Winston Bryant, along with film director Rob Reiner and radio talk show host Dr. Laura.
That'll be really interesting. I'll look forward to that. And also tonight, watch World News Sunday for the latest on today's top stories. So
And
lots more.
Let's hear from Kevin Newman with a preview of Good Morning America.
Well, this week in our Parent to Parent series, how to keep a divorce from hurting the kids. Plus, it's 35 years of General Hospital. We're going to celebrate with some of its stars. And one of my favorite guys, Tom Hanks, is going to be here on Monday. Good Morning America. Make sure you join us.
We will indeed. I'm going to be joining them.
Yes, you are. In fact, I have a good luck charm for you.
All right.
For Good Morning America, you are going on your next assignment. This is an official NASA motion sickness bag. And you can explain why you need that.
I am going, believe it or not, Redeker's very envious of me.
Absolutely.
I'm going tonight. I'm going to Houston, and tomorrow I'm flying on what NASA euphemistically calls, actually it's literally calls, the Vomit Comet. It's a big KC-135 transport plane, padded inside, 20 feet high, and it goes up in the air and then falls 10,000 feet in about 30 seconds. And you
sounds like any other commercial flight.
Anyway, you experience 0 G's, weightlessness. And the astronauts train like this, and they call it Vomit Comet for good reason. We wear these around our neck.
Oh my God!
And
that's where they shot the scenes on Apollo 13, right?
For they shot the scenes, and they trained like that too, to get a feel for all this. So we go weightless for 30-second intervals, and then you fall to the ground. It's gonna be really a blast.
So that's a good luck charm. We hope you don't need to use it.
Tuesday at GMA. Thanks for spending your morning with us. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, thank you.
We'll see you
It was
next week
fun.
as well.
Absolutely.
George, Bill.
Good to see you guys.
Have a great week, everybody, and don't forget Good Morning America tomorrow and World News Tonight on Sunday. See you later.
Good Morning America Sunday has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source. ABC News, now always on.